Here we go again. I said that because I've tried to start this recording a couple of times before. So what I wanted to do here, more importantly, is to demonstrate a web application that I'm working on and about to release to the general public. Well, it's not general public in the sense that anybody can do things in here. You've got to log in to be able to do things. But it's basically a web-based application at this point in time, based on something called FarmOS, which is a open source Drupal-based web application for tracking everything that's got anything to do with farming. I've adapted it a little bit so that it's more aimed at permaculture. Also, I've adapted it in another way, which is FarmOS in its own right, out of the box, is meant to drive everything that relates to a single farm. What I've done here is adapted this, which I'll show in a minute, so that we can use it for multiple farms in a community. And the main idea behind this really is this, to start out with. It's based on the growing or production of food and the sharing or trading of that as time goes forward. And I started this in earnest in January of this year. I've been looking at it for a while, but I wanted to, I'm in Eugene, Oregon in the United States at the moment. I wanted to be able to get farms of all sizes really, to be able to add products here and produce and food products and maybe meat for those who want meat and eggs and so on, so that we can look for those things and see where they may be, so that we can originate a trade or a barter or a share, I should say, or even a gift if we wish to, obviously. So anyway, this is the dashboard. What we're looking at here is upcoming plantings, so that we know when they need to be done, which we add to activities, which I'll show you shortly. So as you can see, we've got October 1, 2018 seed garlic and fava beans and so on and so forth, and then into 2019. Once this program's, at the moment it's running in my lab here in Eugene, once we get it out on the internet, in the wild so to speak, we will be enabling messaging. The only messaging that exists at the moment is actually looking at the dashboard, but what we'll be enabling is messaging, probably mainly via email, but I'm looking at other possibilities, including peer-to-peer. See if we can sort of incorporate that. But anyway, that being said, let's take a look at the different aspects of Perma-ledger, as I say, which is based on FarmOS. So the first thing we're going to look at is areas, and I'll explain a little bit more about this soon. So what this is here, you can get different views of the map, by the way. I'm going to switch it back to Google Hybrid. That's better. So what this is here is what would be typically areas in a single farm. So it might be a field or a barn or whatever it may be. But what I did, I stepped out, and I, instead of having one farm with areas, what I've done is have Eugene as one area, as what would be the farm in FarmOS, and then to take farms and actually nest them underneath that single Eugene area. And then what I can also do is group them. So what you're looking at here on the right part of the screen, that we're going to do quite a bit with the look and feel here, by the way. What this is at the moment, really, in effect, is a database. The front end we'll be doing things with. I have to say I'm very grateful to the people who created FarmOS. It is a wonderful program. I haven't seen any better. So as you can see on the right here, you can see these are all different farms and other things that relate to growing and food. And you can see there's something called bushes and trees, and there's a grouping of companies under that, or entities under that. There's another one for farm animals, and then for farms that supply plants. Some obviously supply plants and animals. And so it goes on. You can see we've got quite a bit of stuff going on in here already. I'm going to get down to something that has some detail in it. So all these, as I say, are different farms. This section we're looking at here is urban farms, and if I just go back up, yeah, farm plants. Well, that's sorry, rural farms. That's what I should have said. My apologies. So we go down a little bit further. These are all different locations, as I say. Then we get to the part that I've been doing most of the work on, which is urban farms. So what we can do, because of the way that Farm OS is nested, we can start off with the main heading, which is farm urban. Then we can talk about a particular farm, which is Angelique's urban farm, and then we can look at different areas in that farm. So let's have a look at this raised bed. I'm not certain whether there's much in it, but let's have a look. Yeah, so what we're seeing here is that in that raised bed, we've got various things that have been planted, and this is bed 1. So we can look into a farm and look what's planted where, if necessary, and when they were planted, and going forward we can look at things like harvests. So this particular farm here, which is Angelique's urban farm, which is in the River Road area, she already had existing plants and she brought some in, like these blueberry plants, but we're tracking things also right from seed, and I'll show you an example of that. So in this case we looked at a particular urban farm, we looked at a bed in that urban farm and what's in that bed. So let's take a look at another, which is in the same sort of area in River Road, and this is Golden Avenue Urban Farm. And the interesting thing about Golden Avenue Urban Farm is its job in life, its main job in life, is to supply a non-profit reality kitchen with plants and eggs. So if we look here, we can pick again. We'll pick one of these beds. I think we'll just pick the first one. See what we get in here. So here, as you can see, in this particular bed, once again, you know, what we planted is there, which is Shiraz beets, cabbage, cauliflower, and kale. And you know, we can see here. We just scroll down a little bit further, the dates that these were planted, what it says arrived, and they're all active. So what we've done so far, we've looked at a particular farm and what that farm is growing. So that's in the area. That's in what's called the areas part of the application. As you can see, there's different things we can do here. We can add observations, an activity, a soil test, a water test, or an input of some kind. Maybe we wrote soil in, for instance. So that's a good. I don't want to get too deep in these different parts, but that's areas. What we're going to look at next is plantings, which is a fairly another key area or another key part of Perma-ledger. So we'll look at plantings here and scroll down a little bit. I have to get a little bit better at using the maps, but what we're now looking at is things that have been planted in alphabetical order. So we're looking, instead of looking at a particular farm, we're looking at a particular crop or tree or whatever it may be, and we can see here that, for instance, with the Fuji apples, there's some out at Turner's Permaculture Farm in Cheshire, and there's actually 2 or 3 lots there in different areas. So if we click on Fuji apple, that particular crop, what we'll find here is that there could be more than one location for Fuji apples. As it happens in this case, there isn't. Once again, we can add different things here: seedings, transplantings, an observation, an activity, some sort of input, harvest, which we'll get there eventually, and we can add a sale. I'm going to adapt that sale thing to be barter and trade and even gift, as I said, if we want to. So let's see if we can pick something that's in more than one place. Because that's really the power of it. When you get something that's, you know, in as I say, in more than one place. I think probably. Let's have a look at. I call it basil. Let's have a look at basil. Yeah. So here we've got you know, there'll be a lot more as time goes by. So we've got basil in two different locations, two different urban farms. So in this case, somebody could be looking for something, and they could say, "Oh, you know, I want to trade. I want to get some basil in trade for some tomatoes," as an example. So what this will do, it'll allow people to take a particular crop and find out where it's planted. I might be able to show you better. Let's just go back one screen here. Let's have a look. Asian greens. I think if we pick, so if we pick, for instance, I picked the wrong, if we just pick apples as a you know, an overall planting, not a particular type of apple, you can see here quite clearly that we've got apples in various places. So once again, you know, somebody looking just for an apple or apples and not bothered about what the type is, there's a lot of different apples already, and this we only have about, in terms of detail, about 4 or 5 farms in this area with stuff in Perma-ledger. So you can already get an idea of how powerful this could be. So we can look at a single farm and see what's planted on that farm. We may be just round the corner and want to know what they've got there that they might be prepared to trade. And of course, nobody's obligated to engage in trading or sharing. It's simply something that we hope to use a crop term is organic and grows. So that's plantings. I hope I've explained that relatively well. I'm just going to show one more thing here because, well, two more actually. So one is what I call logs. So everything that we do in Farm OS, which is underneath Perma-ledger, is logged into one of the logs here. And I think when we look at the logs, we can get an idea of what can be, what can be tracked. You know, as you can see, this is, logs in. First of all, we start off with, we're going from, current to past. So you can see everything that we've ever done here, whatever it was, is in this log and or in the logs, and there's a lot of different logs. So everything, and you can get an idea. I mean, this has been going since January. I'll just go back into the past a bit. So this is in date order from newest to last. So I just went towards the end, and you can see we're back in May, and we're going back. So everything we've seeded and planted is in this log, and anything else we've done actually is in this log. And we can filter by the type, and these are the types of logs that are actually available to us. So there's activity, harvest, input, observation, seeding, transplanting, medical, maintenance, soil test, water test, and sale or trade. So you can see that there's lots of different things that are available to us that we can track. And I just want to show one last thing because this is going on a little bit long, and that is the calendar. So everything that we do is in the calendar. I have some things to actually add today because I actually harvested some fava beans and created some marinated fava beans from you can see here I was noting these before, collecting leaves, marinating fava beans, fermenting green beans and fava beans. So everything we do in every farm that's inside Farm OS will be in the calendar. So that's another powerful way of looking at the data that's there. And I think that it's certainly going to be tremendously useful as we extend, sharing, trading and gifting food in and around the Eugene area. And this is just the beginning. The whole of the Pacific Northwest is facing the Cascadia subduction, which is going to happen. I'm not being, when I say that, I'm not being, I'm not a pessimist, but it's a matter of fact that that's going to happen. And when it does, we could end up with some fairly significant damage, which could limit the food supply into Eugene. So if we have something that lists where all these different kinds of foods are, then we've got a chance of dealing locally with each other more easily when we're in a situation where the freeways are closed due to the earthquake and we can't get food into Eugene. That's one of the key issues. So anyway, thank you for if you watch this, thank you for that, and I shall post this in YouTube once it's ready to be so. Thank you.